Numbers are always fun for me. So here we are with community update number 80. We are in sprint 33, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I'm not going to spend any time talking through this bullet list. It is here in the document. The link is in the chat. You can find it directly from, you can find this page directly from the wiki if you want to take a deeper dive, but I'm going to speak to a lot of this as we go through the components. We did release our node 9.10 late last week to deliver some more metrics to help us further investigate the issue we were observing on the public testnet. You can, again, because it is close on the heels of the release of 9.9, it is a fairly small release, but we wanted to get this out there and in the public testnet to see what happens. You can see there more details about what is in that release in the release plan, and we are working towards the release of 9.11. I know we have now a system of releasing quickly right now as we're trying to fix this issue, but we do anticipate releasing 9.11 the week of July 22nd is the current plan. Related to testnet, the testnet is currently down, and it's related directly to this bug 3593. We are experiencing nodes crashing related. I mean, in the end, they're running out of memory, but not all of them are crashing with a nice announcement of running out of memory. We are able to, in our monitoring effort, to monitor the memory consumption and predict when they're getting ready to crash. But we're trying to figure out why. Why is that memory consumption growing so rapidly? And so the bug is under investigation, as it was last week. What is different this week from last week is that we have introduced a number of metrics into Node to help provide more information as Node is running, especially as Node is running as a validator in these networks, and doing some targeted testing. We've got one test running where we have rolled back several commits in dev to see if we can validate a hypothesis of where this bug was introduced into the code base. So that is a high priority, and that's what's happening right now. If you are an R node user and user of the public testnet, we are currently using that infrastructure to help run one of the tests. And you would notice that if you brought up a node, you would get a error or warning message that your node was not connected to the correct node ID. It does provide you the node ID, and you could certainly connect to it, but you might experience that your node stalls or doesn't behave as you would expect it, and that's because a test is in progress. I will always announce when things are happening in that network in the Discord channel in Testnet. And we will continue to do that, as well as updating you when the testnet is available after we have either figured out what this bug is or figured out how to better support it so it doesn't result in a testnet going down. We do intend to do a community test tomorrow, obviously with testnet down. This is not going to be a hands-on use of testnet session. We are looking to provide a dev team AMA. We have some members of the dev team that can be there during that session, and that's an opportunity for you as our node users or dApp developers, pretty much anybody who has questions related to the development of this project. You are certainly welcome to drop by tomorrow at 1400 UTC to join us there. We're going to talk a little bit more in depth about the blockers to testnet 2. Obviously, if you look at our page, our wiki page, you can see that we predicted launching testnet 2 quite some time ago. And I want to speak a little bit more explicitly and completely to what's happening there. At the time that we predicted the launch of testnet 2, we had a good sense that several things were going to be complete. One is cost accounting was coming along as we expected. And when I say cost accounting, what I mean is the ability to observe a deploy costing something, to deploy that rolling contract to the network, and seeing that token transfer out of the deployer's wallet and into another wallet as receipt of that deployment cost. So at that time we had a good handle on the estimation of that work. The other thing we thought we had a good handle on is the blocker, or the ability to process the Genesis block containing all of the ROC balances to demonstrate the Genesis issuance of test rev as part of the testnet 2 procedure. And we understood the the different categories of testnet to be feature-driven launches. And so with that commitment in mind, we have continued to upgrade testnet 1. So testnet 1 is the current feature set that's available on the testnet. We've continued to upgrade that with every release of RNode that we've done since we delivered that at the end of March, but have held off on doing a formal launch of testnet 2 simply because the features that we set out to deliver with the testnet 2 are not available. And the blockers are known, and you're welcome to take a look at RChain 3168. The link is here in this page to look at what is blocking it. We had a conversation about this during our stand up today, and recognized that maybe the plan to launch testnet 2 as complete as all this maybe is not exactly the right approach, because it looks like we could deliver it incrementally, where incrementally means we could launch a newer version of testnet that for example, includes the feature of cost accounting, or we could launch another testnet that includes the feature of Genesis issued test rev based on rock balances. So with that approach in mind, we are as a team working together over the remainder of this week to understand if we take that approach, then how quickly could we deliver these next launches of testnet 2-ish. I'm not quite sure how we would talk about those in terms of nomenclature, but just to be able to provide more clarity to the community and to testnet users of when they could expect these particular features, especially if we step away from the idea that we would want to launch them together. So let me just pause there. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I don't have any questions, Kelly. I thought that was a really lucid characterization of the situation. I think probably what the community is looking for most, and what is most important, is cost accounting. Mm-hmm. That's our proof ultimately that the network, that the token has utility. Without a full demonstration of that feature, we are unable to provide proof that the token has utility. So that's the thing that needs to come along. That said, the other features, and in particular the Genesis ceremony support, is something that is an important feature for testnet, and maybe we could think about a testnet 1.5 that supports that. Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. And we will certainly know more, I think, by the end of this week in terms of which one of those features will come first, and from an estimated standpoint. Neither of those features are coming by the end of the week, but I think we'll have a better handle and be able to more successfully estimate when those might be coming out. The risks to code completion for Mercury haven't really changed, although I would, just call out that because we are still working towards cost accounting and other bugs that we're facing, that always can delay. But for other things that need to go into Mercury, we're more or less on track there. The consensus team this week is there's a PR in review that modifies conflicts so that volatile events don't create conflicts. This is actually an important part of helping to resolve issues that we're facing with bringing cost accounting into the code base. Kind of in a nutshell, what's happening is when if you are making deployments and that's being accounted for, and you're doing it simultaneously on a busy network, there are blocks that now have conflicts in them, and then it becomes difficult to build your blockchain when you've got conflicting blocks. So what is coming in this particular PR is an understanding in the code base that when there are volatile events, that we don't have to worry about them being conflicting, because in the end that will get resolved as part of the contract. So let me just read the definition of volatile contracts, because this is a relatively new term to our project. These are ones that are canceled out by other events in the deploy, and so that the channels in our space that they use aren't changed after the deploy is complete. And so that's why we can ignore them and not worry about them being conflicting. So Kent has that PR in review. We also have a draft PR in for refactoring the feedback loop in Casper to improve message queuing and processing. We had started this work actually before we experienced our bug in Testnet, and we recognized that this work actually might play a key role in helping to resolve some of what we're seeing in that bug in Testnet. Basically, if you think about the node, we have the COM layer, which handles messaging specifically related to peering and the Kademlia protocol. But we also have in Casper a sensibility for managing messaging, and it's in that place where things get a little backed up, where we see nodes struggling when lots of Casper-related messages are being added to the queue, or when lots of blocks are being passed in a busy network. So Pavel is working on the refactoring here. We anticipate that when this is done, and that will help quiet a little bit some of the noise that Casper sees related to all the messages that are coming in, and help kind of help focus on what's important, and do those important things first, and be able to move past the noise. Also, we have PRs in review to complete the delivery of rolling methods that we need to proceed with the work on validator bonding and unbonding and rewards. So looking forward to getting those in and getting Kent focused on that as quickly as possible. On the Rollin team, we have decided as of the Monday stand-up a resolution for the 2 bugs. Basically, these bugs prevent the interpreter from stopping when it encounters an error in Rollin. And so we decided on Monday to implement a synchronous lock so that the interpreter will stop when it encounters errors. We agree as a team that this is not the best solution for this, and it's the right solution to deliver, in terms of the timeline that we have and our goal of delivering Mercury. So we are going to implement the OK version of the solution right now. That PR is in progress. And then we'll also add to the backlog a need to revisit and provide the better solution at a later time. We also have the first of the 2 planned PRs that are in review related to the Rollin interpreter printing out unmatched sins. This again is work that will help with the debugging of Rollin, and the team agreed that this is more urgent than other debugging efforts that we have planned in terms of helping the team accelerate towards the delivery of Mercury. And we are also related to our plan for being able to launch Testnet 2. We are working this week to take a more fine-grained look at the work that's still needed, the work that's still outstanding, and the work that's in progress related to cost accounting. We are looking for any opportunities to accelerate that, whether that's adding more development team support to it, or in terms of prioritization of that work. So that's work that we have in place for the rest of this week. For the RNode team, we do still have a PR open for the private key path. I talked about this a little bit last week. The reason the PR is still open is because we have a developer that is on vacation, but he will be back and get that in. The node and SRE teams, obviously, I've talked about, are working to continue the investigation of the Testnet problems that we're observing on Testnet. The investigation for the Genesis creation, basically, we have a Genesis block, and it's full of rock addresses. It's full of 16,000 rock addresses that we have pulled off of Ethereum. And when you go to put this into the Genesis block, Node can't support this, so it runs out of memory. It'll run as long as 2 days and run out of memory. So we took the preliminary steps of investigation for that, and Daniel found that the rev generator contract looked to be the place of the bottleneck, and what he observed was that those 16,000 lines of addresses resulted in well over 32,000 lines of Rollin code that was just bogging down the node. So our next steps there are to run some benchmarks in Rollin to further investigate, what's happening, in terms of what's happening there. And I talked with the team after stand up today. It looks like Joe's going to pick up that work just as soon as his most recent PR gets in. So I'm very excited to have him take the lead on that. And finally, in our space, we do have a PR in review to deliver peak to Rollin. and it's pretty close. It's already had a preliminary review. Wukash has made some changes. It's under secondary review. There might be some changes after that, but looking to have that merged in by this time next week. Dom is working to investigate the performance of RSpace. This was, our goal here is to investigate how RSpace is performing and look for ways and priorities for optimization. And you can follow, if you follow this ticket, if you take a look at this ticket 3567, he's developed a wiki page to document how he's investigating RSpace and what his findings are to date. He's early in this investigation, so that page is definitely a work in progress, but if you're deeply interested, it's a well done documentation, and you can see what we're doing and how we're doing it. And finally, in RSpace, we have a draft PR in review. This is part of the work to remove source, and so particularly related to produce and consume source, as part of the optimization effort for the new RSpace. We knew this work needed to be done. We didn't need to investigate it to find that out. And lastly, the SRE team delivered yesterday a Python 3 interface for RNode, and that is available to anyone who would like to use it. The link on the GitHub is here. In the SRE team did this because it supports the work that's going into developing the testing infrastructure for the hardening effort, and recognizes this is work that certainly can be shared and other community members might enjoy it as well. Basically, it supports deploy, propose, and access to the Vault proposal API as part of this offering. So if that's something that interests you as a dApp developer, you're welcome to take a look. But we will be using that as an SRE team as part of the infrastructure for testnet hardening. Any questions about our development status to date? Great, thanks everyone.
Thank you, I really appreciate it. So a couple of things. First of all, we'll be releasing the Q1 reports with the Q2 financials. So sorry about the delay. When Robbie left, there was a bunch of stuff we had to follow up on and make sure that that was done correctly. So just want people to know that those will come out stapled together. And again, apologies for the delay. But I will say that at least financially, the co-op is moving into a good spot. So we'll talk about more about that on the closed door session on Friday. But just want to give people a heads up that we're now starting to get interest from multiple parties. They lots of funds and institutional investors are beginning to recognize that the rock is dramatically undervalued. And so we're being contacted by multiple parties now with significant interest and real offers. So the things are picking up in that regard. And people should feel a little better about how the market is beginning to value the work. So I wanted to push that out. Also, I would like I'd like to encourage people to follow the RCasts and begin to help push those out. That's one of our major marketing tools. And what we're going to need now as we close in on towards mainnet is we're going to need a lot more eyeballs on the technology. And the RCast represents some good materials. Of course, we also have lots of videos of demos now, and we have a pretty significant body of work that we can point people to. Obviously, there's lots of improvement, in particular, especially around documentation of the source code. But we do need to get as many members as possible beginning to push our promotional materials via the social media, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is. It's now's the time, and we also need to start looking at not just conferences but also interviews. I have suggested that we get on various podcasts, and so if there are people out in our community who understand or have connections to these particular podcasts, it would be great if they could help us get a slot, because that a lot of times one appearance on one podcast can make all the difference in terms of the market. So I really want to suggest that we use the entire community's presence and engagement to start that ball rolling. So any questions about any things I've said?
Greg, I have a question.
Sure.
This is Daryl. Are you talking about yourself being interviewed for these podcasts?
I mean, there are a number of people who are, capable of speaking to the RChain, the cooperative, the technology, and the development effort, all of these things. There are a number of different representatives. Obviously, I have a particular take. It may not be the same take as Kelly's take or Chris's take or your take for that matter. And so, I think we want to, we don't want to just have one face for RChain. In reality, what we hope is that, the face for RChain is everyone. Anyone and everyone can ultimately, speak to the value that RChain provides for them. That's our ultimate goal. I've had a great deal of fun speaking to the technology part and the vision of RChain, sort of the why of RChain, or at least my particular why. And I would love to, but I would also like to see fresh faces. That's part of the reason why we have different guests on the RCast conversations. I mean, the one thing I can say about my particular perspective, and it sort of occurred to me last week with full force is, I genuinely hope that people are not viewing blockchain as a way to keep a giant scoreboard in the sky. A giant scoreboard in the sky is, the least valuable proposition of blockchain. And in particular, as it stands now in terms of our current situation, and our need to be able to, our recognized need globally to be able to coordinate to address climate change, that dwarfs virtually any other consideration. But I will say, in terms of my own perspective, part of the reason that I've done this work and what has sustained me over the 35 years it took me to work out the mathematics was that it's beautiful. It's genuinely gorgeous stuff, and I mean, if you look at computational phenomena in general, regardless of whether or not you have treated yourself to the row calculus or the pi calculus or any of that stuff, if you look at computation in general, computational phenomena are just staggeringly beautiful, and they're a very, very tiny portion of mathematics. And yet there's so much mystery and intrigue in computational phenomena that it's worthy of our best attention, and a lot of that beauty is packed into the design of Rollin and the design of the consensus algorithm, the Casper algorithm, and the design of the ladle algorithm. That some of the most wonderful things about computing and about what we now know about computing that we didn't know 30 years ago are represented in those designs. And so what I hope that people take away, when I talk to people, I hope that people come for the beauty and stay for the utility. And that utility is not about a giant scoreboard in the sky. That utility is, how do we coordinate each other more effectively so that we can address some real issues that are on the table. But it would be great to have other perspectives. So I've gone on at length. I've kind of meandered on. I'm sorry. It's a long process. But that's sort of what I'd like to see it be more of a community effort to represent RChain. I noticed that Dan Salkoff has a question about KuCoin. I will, so the co-op has been engaged. The co-op over a month ago sent KuCoin official communications from Miller Nash regarding our position on trading. And, I made it clear to them in emails dating back to June 6th that they are free to open trading as long as, obviously they blocked the scammers' addresses, and with any of the other addresses that we have issue with, that they provide notification that those addresses will not be exchangeable. Any rock that flows from those addresses will not be exchangeable for Rev. And so there were a lot of snafus with respect to communication. The account manager was very sick and in the hospital for some weeks during in the intervening time. And but there also seems to be some misunderstanding with respect to it feels like a language barrier issue. But I can say that the co-op went through all official channels according to how the KuCoin account manager represented what we should do. We did everything, and KuCoin continues to say that we haven't contacted them, but we have the emails, we have the Skype texts, we have everything, and we've done everything we can to follow their protocol. So we believe that it's a language issue and not a well, that's what we hope. It's the most generous interpretation. Hopefully that answers the question. Any other questions before we sign off? Going once, going twice. All right, onward and upward, folks. Looking forward to talking to you next.